Well, thank you so much for this warm welcome indeed. Distinguished guests, dear Joe, dear Michal, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, if I may. I was talking to someone about preparing for this speech, and he gave me some advice. He said, whatever you do, Deike, he said, keep it light. Now there's a challenge for a German, and I think... and I think I'm going to fail miserably, but I love a challenge, so I promise I'll give it a second go and we'll be very light over beer afterwards. So let me start by thanking you wholeheartedly for the invitation to come here and open the MacGill Summer School. It's wonderful to be back in beautiful Donegal, where I spent wonderful days during the summer holiday before my posting, and came back several times since. Then as now, the scenery is truly mesmerizing, and seeing Ben Bulben on the horizon, I have to say it's definitely my favorite mountain ever, even if it is in Sligo. You'd most certainly expect me to praise German-Irish bilateral relations, and I promise I won't disappoint you. I will come to that in a little while, but let me say a few personal words on Europe first, thus alluding in a way to the motto you've chosen for this year's summer school. 30 years ago, in the summer of 1989, I set out on a holiday trip to Bulgaria in a Soviet car most of you most certainly have never heard of, a Moskvich. A friend of mine had rebuilt it from scratch, as you did in those days. When we left my home in East Berlin, in East Germany, in the GDR, we were scrutinized by border patrol guards. Where are you going? Will you be coming back? Are you planning to leave East Germany for good? Why are you traveling with a camping table and chairs? At that time, thousands of Germans, East Germans, had already left the GDR in search for a better life, a life of more freedom and prosperity. Traveling to Bulgaria, we met begging kids in Romania who threw little stones at our supposedly fancy car and shouted for anything we could give to them. And people back home had already told us what to bring for them: pepper, coffee, jelly beans. How far have we come from that today? At our camping site in Bulgaria, we were again scrutinized by others who seemed to be tourists. How come one of your friends has this fancy Lada car? Where did she get it from? Are we really going back to East Germany? Are we not planning to go to the West? These people were obviously agents of the Stasi, the secret police, and they did indeed give us the creeps. On our way back to East Germany, we first passed through Hungary, thinking for a minute, shall we turn right to the refugee camps? Arriving at the East German border, I was actually a little bit disappointed because I thought I would get this big bunch of flowers because we were sort of the only ones going back. But then on the news, on the day of our return, I heard Erich Honecker, the then head of state, say, "We won't shed a tear for those who left." I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life in coming back home. But it all turned out well. The wall fell soon, and people started to enjoy individual liberties and democracy in this reunited Germany at the heart of the European Union. And so did I. So why am I telling you this? People left East Germany because they wanted to be able to determine their life freely. They wanted to enjoy freedom of speech and thought, basic human rights, the rule of law, democracy, the right to vote freely. They wanted opportunities in their life. And they saw these on the other side of the Iron Curtain. They did not want to be oppressed people in a dictatorship. President Michael D. Higgins got a glimpse of that desire for freedom of 1989, the hope, the courage shown by people during his recent visit to Leipzig. He heard about the peace prayers and Monday demonstrations from a 1989 eyewitness. I have no problem admitting that another East German in the church and I were moved by remembering. We were still amazed all these years later at how we reached reunification peacefully and became members of the European Union, also with the help of our Irish friends. I feel it's important to keep telling these stories because we seem to take the achievements in this Europe, this European Union of ours, for granted these days too easily. I wish we would remember more clearly and more often where we came from in Europe and what we have achieved. Or as Chancellor Merkel recently said in her speech in Harvard, and I highly recommend listening to it, quote, "Despite all the discussions and all the temporary setbacks, I firmly believe that we Europeans have united for the better." End of quote. She also underlined how wonderful it is that former wartime enemies became friends. As she put it in Portsmouth a few weeks ago, that I, as a German federal chancellor, am able to participate here today, and that we together campaign for peace and freedom, that is a gift of history that we need to protect and care for. And I'm personally still grateful every time that I'm invited to a commemoration ceremony, sitting next to my British, my French, my Belgian, Australian, New Zealand colleague, and so many others who are, if I may say so, friends too. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we undoubtedly live in turbulent times, and there is ample room and necessity for getting better. We have to, and we can get better. Not only, but of course, on some of the major challenges that were also mentioned before, climate change, implications of digitization, and the protection of our democracies. But, and that's really important to me, it won't do any harm to see and speak about the progress we have made too. Or as former President of the United States, Obama, once said, and I quote, "If you had to choose a moment in history to be born, and you did not know ahead of time who you would be, you did not know whether you were going to be born into a wealthy family or a poor family, what country you'd be born in, whether you were going to be a man or a woman, if you had to choose blindly what moment you'd want to be born, you choose now." End of quote. It's worthwhile for that to look at the facts, I feel, as well. And Hans Rosling's book, Factfulness, or Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now, are a great help in doing so. The world has made, Rosling says, tremendous progress. Contrary to what most people believe, for example, extreme poverty decreased by 50% over the last 20 years. It dropped faster than ever. And that's but one example. Rosling calls our appetite for drama, as he says, and people's negativity instinct as some reasons for what he calls the mega misconception that the world is getting worse. And he strongly asks his readers to see the progress as, quote, "We live in the most peaceful times in human history," end of quote. Pinker, on the other hand, sees an optimism gap and speaks of progressophobia and quotes Franklin Pierce Adams saying, quote, "Nothing is more responsible for the good old days than a bad memory." And he too states, and here is a shocker, the world has made spectacular progress in every single measure of human well-being. Here is a second shocker, almost no one knows about it. And if you allow me one more thought on that, people from all over the world try to come to Europe because we are what we are. A region of peace and prosperity, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. They see us as a safe haven for a reason. They see, as Martin Wolf of the Financial Times recently said, that, quote, "societies that have been built around those ideas have been and are today the most successful in the world," end of quote. And this is what makes us attractive for people who do not see a chance for themselves or their children back home. I feel it is important to remind myself of this from time to time. And for our debates, facts are important here too. According to the recent report by the United Nations, out of the 70 million of forcibly displaced persons worldwide, 41 million are actually internally displaced, and 91% of those refugees do not live in the European Union. And the first 10 recipients countries for refugees are Turkey, Pakistan, Uganda, Sudan, then it's Germany, followed by Iran, Lebanon, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, and Jordania. And in Lebanon, for instance, every 6th inhabitant is a refugee. I do think facts, however, are not enough. We do need a strong, a powerful emotional narrative in Europe and beyond. And that's why I started off with that story at the beginning, and that was only one of my personal stories, but there are millions of people out there with their own story. It's worthwhile sharing them. Having grown up in very different circumstances, I sometimes wish we could have a more positive discourse about what we have achieved in Europe, in the European Union, and that inside, but more importantly, outside our own echo chambers. And that again is not enough either, as German President Steinmeier pointed out in his recent speech. Joe is leaving already. Is it so bad? Is it so bad? I promise I won't be late. So that again is not enough either, as German President Steinmeier pointed out in his recent speech. The European Union was what is at stake when he said, quote, "We need to ask questions about the European Union's weaknesses, to find the right answers in order to preserve our political union and strengthen it for the future. If we want to undermine the populist strategies, the question we need to ask is, what policies do we want in and for the EU? And this can and indeed must be a topic of impassioned debate. Using the experience of the past as the only raison d'être for the European Union will not convince any 20-year-old. If you want to persuade young people about the importance of Europe, you need to do so in the present with policies for the future." German Foreign Minister Maas said that our common response to the many challenges today must be Europe united. In a speech in Berlin, he called for a European patriotism that, quote, "gives us the courage we need for the Europe of the future. A Europe that is united internally and strong externally, a Europe where wealth is distributed fairly, a Europe that stands up for peace and fair compromises between countries, and a Europe that protects freedom in the Union itself and stands up to foreign despots abroad." End of quote. So now, I promised to say a few words on German-Irish relations. And as you expect me to praise Germany, I will get some help from a well-known Irish violinist who studied and lived in Germany for 8 years, Aoife Ní. She recently told the Irish Times, and I quote, "I don't understand how Irish people don't love Germany more. The Germans are so anxious to collaborate, so willing to give. And if our two countries take the time to work together, anything can happen." And I just want to say thank you so much, Aoife. When I arrived in Ireland, I was giving an interesting geography lesson when I learned that Boston is closer to Dublin than Berlin. I was actually kind of surprised. Was my geography teacher really so wrong? But no, last time I checked, Berlin was 1,700 kilometers away from Dublin, and Boston, on the contrary, 4,800. And while you, of course, are emotionally closer to Boston for a number of reasons, I'm hopeful that our two countries, our two people, grow even closer together, emotionally too. Or, as an Irish businessman recently said to me, Germany should become the new Britain for Ireland. In certain ways, I might add. Sorry, Sarah. We are most certainly not doing badly. Germany is the second largest inward investor in Ireland, the third biggest source of tourism. Last year, 90,000 visitors came to Ireland from Germany. We are the fourth biggest export market for Irish producers. 300 German companies employ 20,000 people here. German is the second foreign language after French in schools, and Ireland has more and closer research links with us than with Britain, actually. So for anyone looking for tension, I'm again disappointing you, there is none. In the light of Brexit, and there it is, the word you all waited for, and I managed to avoid for a few minutes, I feel a growing interest on both sides in a closer bilateral relationship between Germany and Ireland. The recent very successful state visit of your president underlined that fact once more. He too stressed that we have a very good, long-standing basis for links, economically, but also culturally, and it's worthwhile making it even stronger. We share so many values and convictions when we talk about the future of Europe, the importance of multilateralism, the importance of the rules-based world order, the protection of democracy. At the state dinner in honor of the President Higgins in Berlin, President Steinmeier mentioned the Irish Citizens' Assembly as a wonderful example for new instruments of democracy. For me, the visit underlined how important personal encounters are to make a relationship even stronger. The Irish government's review of bilateral relations and the German like-minded initiative were the basis for a joint action plan we signed in November, and we're implementing it. I also would want to stress here again, for Germany, it has always been important to work closely with all partners in the European Union, big or small. And while we do indeed feel that France and Germany can be engines in and for Europe, we always mean an inclusive approach with all and for all member states. I'm very happy to see a re-energizing of bilateral political visits between Germany and Ireland. The Taoiseach and a number of Irish ministers went to Germany. Our foreign minister was here twice in 10 months, just last year actually. Chancellor Merkel came here in April. The president, accompanied by the Taoiseach, went to Berlin, Leipzig, Würzburg and Frankfurt. And he invited President Steinmeier to come here, who gladly accepted and will be here early next year. The German-Irish Parliamentary Friendship Group of the Bundestag was here, other committees of the Bundestag too, and just 2 weeks ago the entire CSU group of the Federal Parliament, Angela Merkel's Bavarian allies, came over here. We also saw the first ever state secretary consultations last year, and we established a forum for experts and executives, the Joint Vision Forum, which already met twice. So all this is great news, and it gives me great joy to be here at this time of dynamic relations. The Irish Times recently observed a, I quote, pivot to Germany, and added, quote, like never before, Berlin and Dublin are pushing an ambitious agenda of political and diplomatic cooperation in the EU, the UN, and beyond. Discussions on every political level have never been so intense. And by the way, all German visitors and President Steinmeier in Berlin gave the same important message to Ireland. Germany is fully behind Ireland on Brexit. As President Steinmeier put it in Berlin, quote, you need not worry about the German position. Germany stands firmly by Ireland's side. Or as Chancellor Merkel said in Family House in April, Germany will stand with Ireland every step of the way. And until the very last hour, I can say this from the German side, we will do everything in order to prevent a no-deal Brexit. And as she said again 2 days ago in Berlin, the withdrawal agreement is the withdrawal agreement. And our foreign minister, when he was here in Dublin, also said in January, avoiding a hard border in Ireland is a fundamental concern. It is a matter of principle, a question of identity for the European Union. But ladies and gentlemen, it is also clear that it is really important to us, and we want a very close and good and friendly relationship with the United Kingdom also post-Brexit, and that's what we are going to work on. Ireland too is stepping up efforts and strengthening our relations by sending more people to its mission in Berlin, opening a general consulate in Frankfurt, opening a second Enterprise Ireland office in Munich, where, by the way, and if you haven't been, go and see it, the continent's largest St. Patrick's Day parade takes place every year. But let me also say that I'm also delighted to see many active town twinnings and school exchanges. They are a backbone of links between our people, and I do hope for more. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will end here with an invitation. Come and visit Germany. And I'm not being paid by the tourism office, by the way. Get on one of the 169 flights to Germany per week this summer to get to know us better. It's only 2 hours away, and actually Berlin is closer to Dublin than Boston. You might find out. You might not think of us in holiday terms, but we actually are a beautiful holiday destination. White beaches, soothing rivers, majestic mountains, cool cities, not least my ever so cool hometown Berlin. Good weather, value for money, even, and you might be surprised, our wine is great, and I know about all those bad memories of German wine in Ireland, but we've long progressed from that. So whatever kind of holiday you want, you find a corner of Germany for you and your family. And if you're bitten by the bug, maybe you come back here and you want to indulge into some German lessons. So the Goethe Institute is more than ready to receive you in Dublin, in the wonderful Marion Square. And like our wine, our language goes down far easier than its reputation. So, or you start a town training, or start doing business with us. I'd be delighted to see any of that happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again very much for giving me the opportunity to be here with you. I'd be delighted to talk to you after and raise a glass to our new, old friendship. And I wish this year's MacGill Summer School every success. Thank you so much. Go Milma Agus.